Tired of reading the same old stuff? The Bookworm Duo is here to rescue you. We distill the essence of captivating books into engaging videos so you can gain knowledge without spending hours reading. Let's explore the world of ideas together. Okay, so for today's deep dive, we're taking a look at Alison Espach's The Wedding People. It's a story about Phoebe Stone, a Victorianist professor dealing with some seriously heavy stuff, grief over losing her cat, a stalled career, and, oh yeah, her husband's infidelity. It all leads her to make a pretty drastic decision.
What's intriguing is how Espach juxtaposes Phoebe's inner turmoil with this extravagant seaside wedding she decides to attend. It's most as if she's drawn to the vibrancy and celebration as a kind of escape, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's like she's seeking out an environment that's the complete opposite of her own internal state. And speaking of environments, the setting itself, this luxurious hotel called the Cornwall Inn, plays a huge role. It's practically overflowing with these larger-than-life wedding people, each with their own quirks and secrets.
It's a brilliant setup for exploring themes of identity and performance, wouldn't you say? We have Leela, the seemingly perfect bride, who beneath the surface is grappling with doubts about her much older groom, Gary. Gary himself is shrouded in mystery, carrying a past that slowly unfolds throughout the story. And then there's his daughter, Juice, who's dealing with the loss of her mother while trying to navigate this whirlwind wedding weekend.
The supporting cast is just as fascinating. There's Jim, the good-natured but often clueless brother-in-law, and Marla, the lawyer who's obsessed with appearances and keeping everything running smoothly. It's like Espach has created this microcosm of society where everyone's playing a role, trying to fit into a predetermined narrative.
And amidst all this carefully orchestrated chaos, Phoebe finds herself increasingly drawn to the people at the heart of it all. Her initial encounter with Leela is quite striking. Phoebe attempts to confess her suicidal intentions, but Leela, preoccupied with her own anxieties, barely registers it.
It's a powerful illustration of how self-absorbed we can be, even when faced with someone else's pain. But as the story unfolds, a genuine connection begins to form between Phoebe and Leela. They find solace in each other's vulnerabilities, sharing their doubts and fears in a way they can't with anyone else.
What's particularly interesting is how their bond develops through a series of seemingly insignificant moments. During a chaotic boat trip, fueled by excessive cocktails, both Phoebe and Leela let their guard down, revealing glimpses of their true selves beneath the carefully constructed facades.
And it's not just Leela. Phoebe also forms a connection with Gary. Despite their age difference and vastly different life experiences, they discover a shared love of literature and an understanding of grief that transcends the superficiality of the wedding festivities.
These unexpected connections seem to be the catalyst for Phoebe's transformation. Surrounded by people obsessed with performing the perfect wedding, she finds solace in the authenticity of these raw human moments. It begs the question, are these fleeting connections enough to pull her back from the brink?
That's the central tension that keeps you hooked. As the wedding day approaches, the events leading up to it become increasingly absurd. There's a disastrous bachelorette party involving a very uncomfortable session with a sex therapist, and then there's the discovery of the vintage wedding car. Well, let's just say it's been defiled in a way that's both shocking and hilarious.
The humor in these scenes serves a really interesting purpose. It highlights the absurdity of the situation, the lengths to which people will go to maintain this facade of perfection, even when everything is falling apart beneath the surface.
And it's within this chaotic environment that Phoebe finds herself increasingly drawn to Gary. It's not a romantic connection at first, but rather a meeting of minds. They have deep conversations about literature, loss, and the complexities of life. It's like they see each other, the parts that are hidden beneath the surface.
Their connection is a stark contrast to the superficiality of the wedding itself. It's a reminder that genuine human connection can blossom in the most unexpected places, even amidst the chaos and pretense of a grand celebration.
And speaking of chaos, the rehearsal dinner takes a pretty dramatic turn. Jim, fueled by a few too many drinks, accidentally reveals a secret about a painting that Gary has been obsessed with. Turns out Leela had simply gifted it to him, but he's been presenting it as this grand romantic gesture. The look on Leela's face when she realizes everyone knows the truth is priceless.
The incident with the painting feels symbolic, doesn't it? It's as if all the carefully constructed illusions are starting to crumble. And it's through these cracks that Phoebe begins to see the real Leela, a woman trapped by expectations and desperate to break free.
Absolutely. Later that night, Leela bursts into Phoebe's room, completely distraught. She confesses that she doesn't love Gary and that the entire wedding feels like a charade.
It's a raw and vulnerable moment, Leela, who has spent this entire weekend performing the role of the perfect bride, finally lets her guard down and admits that she's unhappy.
Yeah,
What's your take on this? Is it a moment of self-awareness or simply a case of cold feet?
it's a tough question, isn't it? You can see the conflict within Leela, the struggle between societal expectations and her own desires. It's like she's been caught in this whirlwind of wedding planning and lost sight of what truly matters.
And how does Phoebe react to Leela's confession?
Well, being the amazing friend that she is, Phoebe tries to help Leela calm down. She even offers to help her call off the wedding, but in a surprising turn of events, Leela decides to go through with it, even though she's clearly having second thoughts.
That decision speaks volumes about Leela's character. It's almost as if she's still clinging to the hope that this wedding will somehow magically fix everything. Perhaps she believes that if she can just play the part well enough, eventually the happiness everyone expects will follow.
There's definitely a sense of denial there. But the wedding day arrives, and despite the undercurrent of unease, everything seems to be going according to plan. The ceremony is set in this breathtaking great hall. Everyone's dressed to the nines, and the tension is palpable.
It's almost theatrical, wouldn't you say? The guests are like an audience caught up in the spectacle of this grand wedding, completely oblivious to the turmoil beneath the surface. And then right before Leela is supposed to walk down the aisle, she disappears, vanished, poof.
Talk about a dramatic plot twist. What do you make of Leela's decision to run away? Is it an act of cowardice or a moment of self-preservation?
I think it's more complex than that. On one hand, she's bailing on this huge commitment, potentially hurting a lot of people. But on the other hand, she's finally choosing to listen to her own heart, prioritizing her own happiness, even if it means facing the consequences.
It's a bold move for sure, and it leaves everyone scrambling. The guests are left wondering what happened. The groom is standing at the altar completely bewildered, and Phoebe is caught in the middle of this emotional whirlwind.
What stands out to me is how Espach uses this chaotic moment to further explore Phoebe's transformation. Remember, she arrived at this wedding with the intention of ending her life, but now faced with this unexpected situation, she finds herself taking charge, stepping up in a way she never would have imagined.
And how does she do that?
Well, in a completely unexpected turn of events, Phoebe steps in and takes Leela's place. She agrees to walk down the aisle and stand in for the runaway bride. Talk about a wedding shocker.
It's a pivotal moment, isn't it, by taking Leela's place? Phoebe isn't just saving the wedding. She's taking control of her own narrative. She's no longer the passive observer. She's the one making a choice, even if it's a completely crazy one.
It's almost as if she's stepping into Leela's shoes, literally and figuratively, confronting the societal expectations and pressures that Leela was trying to escape. And remember, this is all happening with the added complication of Phoebe's ex-husband, Matt, showing up unexpectedly. Guess who's waiting for her at the end of the aisle?
Oh, no, you're kidding, Matt. Talk about an awkward reunion. What happens next?
Well, Phoebe doesn't hold back. She confronts Matt, calling him out for his cowardice and the pain he caused her. It's like she's finally releasing all the anger and resentment she's been carrying for so long.
It must have been incredibly cathartic for her.
Absolutely. And you can see that Matt is genuinely affected by her words. It's as if he's finally seeing the consequences of his actions and the depth of Phoebe's pain.
So what happens after this confrontation? Does Phoebe go back to St. Louis with Matt?
That's the beauty of Espach's storytelling. She subverts our expectations after the wedding charade, and the emotional showdown with Matt Phoebe makes a decision that surprises everyone, perhaps even herself.
Okay, don't leave us hanging. What's the decision?
She decides not to go back to her old life. She chooses to stay at the Cornwall Inn and embrace the possibility of a new beginning.
Wow, that's huge. What leads her to make that choice?
It's a culmination of everything she's experienced during this whirlwind wedding weekend. The unexpected connections, the moments of vulnerability, the realization that she has the power to define her own happiness. It's like she's finally breaking free from the expectations of her past and choosing to create a future on her own terms.
It's an incredible act of self-discovery. She goes to this wedding expecting one thing and ends up finding something entirely different. It's like the wedding itself becomes this catalyst for her own personal transformation.
Precisely. It's not just about finding a new job or a potential new love interest. It's about Phoebe reclaiming her own agency. She's making choices that are authentic to her, even if they go against societal expectations. What's fascinating is how Espach uses these seemingly small, everyday interactions to illustrate Phoebe's growth. Remember the scene where she encourages Juice to drop that plastic dog in the ocean?
Oh, yeah. It seemed like such a minor detail at the time, but now that you mention it, it feels quite significant.
It was a subtle but powerful act of rebellion. It's as if Phoebe is giving Juice permission to break free from the constraints of adult expectations and embrace the freedom and spontaneity of childhood.
And it wasn't just about Juice, was it? I think it was a turning point for Gary as well. He saw a different side of Phoebe in that moment, a woman who wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo and live life on her own terms.
There's definitely a sense of liberation in their connection. They're both grappling with loss and uncertainty, but they find solace in each other's company. They can be their true selves without pretense or judgment. And let's not forget Jim, who remains utterly smitten with Phoebe despite her clear disinterest in anything romantic.
Poor Jim. He's such a lovable character, though his unrequited affection for Phoebe adds a layer of complexity to their dynamic, wouldn't we say?
Absolutely. It's interesting how Espach subverts the typical romantic tropes. Instead of a classic love triangle, we have this genuine sense of camaraderie between Phoebe, Gary, and Jim. They're all navigating this messy, complicated wedding weekend together, and they find support and understanding in the most unexpected places.
It speaks to the power of human connection, doesn't it? Even in the midst of chaos and heartbreak, we can find solace and support in the most unexpected places.
That's one of the things I appreciate most about Espach's writing. She reminds us that life is messy and unpredictable, and that sometimes the greatest journeys are the ones we don't plan for.
And in the end, it's Phoebe who chooses herself. She decides to stay at the Cornwall Inn, pursue the job at the historic mansion, and see where life takes her. She's no longer defined by her past or the expectations of others. She's writing her own story.
And that's the most powerful message of The Wedding People. It's a reminder that we all have the power to choose our own path, to redefine ourselves, and to create a life that is meaningful and authentic to who we truly are.
The Wedding People is a story about grief loss and the complexities of human relationships. But it's also a story about hope, resilience, and the power of unexpected connections. If you're looking for a book that will make you laugh, cry, and think about the world in a new way, highly recommend checking it out.
I second that. It's a book that will stay with you long after you've finished reading it.
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe for more bookish adventures and hit that like button if you enjoyed the ride. Don't forget to share the knowledge, spread the word.